Hi all, this is Ravi from Go Live Games, and I'm going to talk about a very exciting panel, esports investors, right? So essentially, gaming investors are quite few, and then on top of it, investors who are specializing in esports. So we're going to hear from the esports investors about their thoughts, how's the ecosystem shaping up, especially in the Indian ecosystem perspective. So I'd like to invite our panelists right now. So Shagun from Center Court Capital, please, please have a warm response. Yes. Divyanshu from India Accelerator, and we have Anup from Eurozoya Investors. Okay. So to start off with, I'll start with the introductions. I'll let each of the panelists introduce themselves. Over to you, Shagun.
Hi everyone, my name is Shagun Shah. I am an associate at Center Court Capital where I lead gaming investments. So my background is actually in game dev. I was a game designer for about 11 years, made my way through AAA, mobile, indie, and then finally put my college degree to good use and shifted over to venture investments. So at Center Court Capital, we are a sector-focused fund, early stage, and we look at esports and gaming in one sector, and we look at sports tech on the traditional sports side, so cricket, football, and what have you. So that's us in a nutshell. And yeah, Divyanshu, let's...
Divyanshu.
Hello everyone, myself Divyanshu from India Accelerator. So we've been in the industry for the last 5 years. We are a sector agnostic fund. Now 4 months back we launched a gaming centric fund called IA Power Play. That's focused only on esports and gaming startups. Till date, we have worked with 11 startups as of now and plan to work with more.
Anup.
So first of all, thank you, Ravi. It's a fantastic event. It's first time for me being here as well at IGDC. So hi everyone, my name is Anup. I started my journey in the industry as an esports athlete myself. This is back in 2008, 2012 time, so very early nascent stage for esports in India. I've been a club owner, so I understand that journey very well for clubs and how it's panned out over the years. Beyond that, I was part of the leadership at Nordwin as part of the early team, so I've seen events unfold and how esports has grown over the years. Over the last few years, I've been spending time building Eurosia Gaming, and what we do primarily is we act as a scout for esports companies. So we are kind of like a middleman between a VC and an esports business. And so our job is primarily to first help provide growth and advisory to an esports business saying, hey, where does a VC see an opportunity in your business, or what you can probably build that is a great opportunity for a VC. Then align that particular conversation to be a straightforward conversation so that when you're talking to a VC and you're explaining your vision, you are very straightforward and the conversation is as smooth as possible to get you to the next steps in that conversation. So in other words, we are a scout and a growth consultant for esports businesses.
So taking that forward, can you give us an example or an instance of how that whole arrangement or equation worked?
Sure. So what we try to do is first off, like on one side we have we have a network of businesses, not only specifically in India but across in US, in Europe, where esports markets are are looked at as more growth markets and more established markets, right? And so our network here is primarily with not only with esports clubs, but also organizers and beyond that, technology companies that enable esports to be better, right? In terms of solving small problems or large problems. So that's one side. We also actively work with some esports game publishers because these are the guys who actually take most value in this esports business as to what we have seen. Like businesses who want to become the next Riot or the next Valve or the next Fortnite and so on. So we work with budding small entrepreneurs based outside India, and I think from what I am aware is Indus is one of the ones from India who's trying to take that spotlight going forward, and I'll look forward to meeting more. But on the other side is, so what we do is we will sit with the founder and we'll look at the deck, and most of the times we come across a deck that is like a 20 slider or 30 slider, and we say, hey, how can we make this a 5 slider, right? And with least information as possible, where slide 1 is basically who you are, slide 2 is what is the problem that you see, slide 3 is how you're solving this problem, right? And most probably 2 lines per slide works very, very well, as pinpoint as you are. And slide 4 is then basically talking about, hey, what are the risks that you see while you solve this problem? So don't say that, hey, my journey is like a year long, and these are the things I'm going to do a year-long journey. Just be confident and say, hey, this is what I see as the 10-year journey for this startup, right? What am I doing in the next 2 years? What probably the numbers look like? So slide 4 is actually very detailed. And slide 5 is like saying, hey, while I'm doing this, if you are part of our journey, how does your journey with us look like? Right? So building that out and then sitting with a VC, probably a 30-minute call helps a gaming VC understand this very well. Everything is fleshed out, and if this works out well, then that's great for you. If not, we find another partner for you. But the most important other part where we come in place is not a spray and pray kind of an approach that we do. We understand what VCs and theses that these VCs are following, and that's where we connect you to the right VC post the stage 1.
Okay. So Divyanshu, I think you have a very big portfolio of gaming and esports startups. Can you give us some names of the companies? What do they do and things like that?
So when we started IA Power Play, it was 4 months back. We didn't have any idea what is esports, what is gaming. But we had a passion. We were seeing the market. It was growing with a great scale. Then we actually met Ravi sir. Correct. And when we started it, the first startup that we onboarded or invested in was Villager Esports. It's a tournament organizer. Everyone following esports from the last 4-5 years, they've been in the market. Correct. Then the second startup was Marcos Gaming. It's a tournament organizer. It's a team owner. And then we invested in few gaming development companies. And now in total, we have invested in 10 startups. In talks with 2 more, Uwin and Multiplayer. In January, February, we are also coming up with our own gaming development fund to help these game development companies in the seed stage. And yeah, that's all, sir.
Okay. Shagun, can you give us some insights about the industry, the kind of pitches you must be hearing, or the kind of companies or models that are exciting to you?
No, for sure. So on a thesis level, we look at about 3 things in the esports space, right? We look at esports teams, leagues, so organizers. We look at esports infra. And infra can be things that are B2B, so back-end technologies, things that, drive the whole sort of tournament experience, and then also things on the fan engagement, community side, and so on and so forth. So over this last year, we've gone through a whole bunch of pitches. The real challenge on this front is not that the businesses are not exciting. In fact, to me, esports is a very exciting space to play in. I think it's kind of excellent to see how, as the gaming ecosystem has grown in India on a development side, on the publishing and business side, you've also seen sort of the community angle of esports also grow, where today, as a young person, you can build a viable career and perhaps even make retirement quality money before you hit 30 by competing in an esport, right? And fundamentally, the work is also fun. But when I look at the companies that I see structurally, the challenge is in what is the VC level of investability in these things? What are the returns for a venture investor? Thus far, have seen that most of the businesses that come to us are great for the promoters, the founders of the company, where there are great returns to be made, especially in the short term. Have had the good fortune to meet some very young founders who come from humble beginnings, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, so on and so forth, and really see fabulous revenue in their first year of operations. What that tells me, there's an audience appetite, and that there is a serious opportunity for someone to get in with a small amount of capital. If you're coming from Jhansi, Bokharo, you're in college, you've made a little bit of money in a first job, and in 2 or 3 lakhs you can actually start this business is actually very good to see, right? From a business standpoint, like yes, I am. But from an investor standpoint, I have to also say, okay, if as a fund we're infusing $1 million, $2 million, then where will that come back to us as well, right? And so, if we're giving 2 and we're expecting 20, then the company needs to have made or be valued at 100 million or 500 million. And I think the real issue at this stage lies in the scaling of an esports business. And I mean, I'll talk about some more, I don't want to take so much time, but that's essentially where we are. And yeah.
Those were amazing insights. In fact, I would let you continue if you want to add some more points.
I can talk for 22 minutes, man.
No.
No. All jokes aside. Let's pass it on. I'll come back and share some.
So the reason why I was thinking on that perspective is, from an investor's perspective, ROI is mandatory, right? I mean, essentially, investment funds also have their own backers who are essentially supporting you to go channel those funds to startups, but from an ROI perspective. So are you playing the long game? What are you seeing in the short term, long term? Anup, I'll start with you. I think you have been associated with some international esports franchises as well, right?
Sure.
So what is the thought process there? How is it different from India, if you have seen any?
From what I understand is, and what and it's also a constant learning process in most businesses. From what I look at, mostly some of the European businesses, for example, in esports that I've looked at, they always look at saying, hey, how, like with a very long-term approach. So that's very important. So one of the organizations I consult right now is a Swedish esports club. And esports clubs in most places are, for a lot of investors, may not look like lucrative business opportunities because for many particular reasons, and also a lot of games today in esports are in the early stages of in-app monetization. But when you look at European clubs, for example, and the esports ecosystem that exists there, there is a large amount of revenue that comes from in-app, right? If you look at, for example, Counter-Strike, and Counter-Strike has a legacy of 20 years right now, right? And is one of the top leading esports today. And a tier 1 club, which probably would be at the bottom of the table in the world ranking, would still walk away with $1 million, $2 million a year kind of an in-app revenue, right? And that's great, but I mean, those kind of more monetization opportunities are required for esports clubs to own. But again, esports clubs is one in the esports ecosystem, right? What I always look at the end of the day is the long story works well. And whenever you're trying to build a business and you're in the early stages of planning, always look at saying, hey, how you can try to have a world focus, because that's basically says that, hey, you have an opportunity to keep growing and growing, right? So even when I sit with founders from India, I say, hey, when you are building any esports business, may it be a technology player or may it like a pure play technology, a B2B for esports infrastructure, for example, or a game developer or a publisher and so on, always look at saying, hey, you don't build only for India. Have tried to build for the world, right? And you will find a lot of partners, maybe some partners that you are great M&A opportunities for you, but always look forward for a long growth story, and that's great vision to follow at the end of the day.
So Divyanshu, when you invested into esports companies already, what was the idea? I mean, do you see that these companies will explode and boom in the next 3-4 years, or are you looking at it from the long-term perspective of 10 years or something like that?
So we come at a very early stage. So when we invest, it's probably the first or the second round that we invest in. So what is the main thing that we see in a startup is that every startup is good at the initial stages, but is it a VC investable startup? Because the VC will be one who will be giving us an exit. Correct. So on the first round and the second round, we have to see that And the second main thing is how the founder is ready to do the pivots and everything. Because he cannot develop a startup, he cannot make a startup at the first go. There will be some pivots, there will be some new things that will be adding to the startup. Correct. So how the founder is ready to do that, that plays a very vital role in our thesis, when we invest, that's the major thing that we see. And the pedigree of the founder also, that plays a very vital role in the first, second rounds that we come in. And yeah, if every box is ticked, then we see if it's investable or not. That's what we do.
Okay. So Shagun, let me ask you a very summarized, concise question because it's a very generic point, right? So Anup saying that the vision of the founders has to be big enough, maybe ready for expanding at the globe. Devyanshu has also focused on the founders, their pedigree. Are they willing to pivot, willing to evolve during those hardships and so on? So when you talk to founders, what are you looking for, and how do you, like you just mentioned earlier about the bigger investments, bigger returns. So how do you gauge that in such an early stage ecosystem like India?
Okay, so I think there are sort of two ways that I would look at an incoming esports company, whether it's infra, team, whatever. The first is, of course, the pedigree of the founder and so on and so forth. And the things that we're really trying to evaluate are, say, esports is while it's sort of existed for the last 20 years, 25 years with StarCraft and Warcraft and so on and so forth, it's also been very region localized. So StarCraft 1 and Brood War were the de facto national sport of Korea back in 2002, 3, 4, right? And then Dota, of course, Dota 2 has grown. The prize pools of the international have grown and now also dropped. But in fact, this year will be the lowest prize pool. So on one hand, I look at the market scenario. But when it comes on a founder level, you're looking for talent that has a good business sense, right? End of the day, so how are esports, let's say, teams built or leagues built, right? You're picking a game that is a privately owned IP, right? This is obviously always a risk. Games like CS2, Dota that have these 20-year sort of long-standing, relationships with their audiences are not so common anymore. Now, in fact, this year we're seeing that there's such a vast, the release calendar for games, multiplayer games, and high-quality games is so much in excess that only 2 or 3 are really making that money, and then everybody else, even though they're of excellent quality, are dropping off. Now, the point I'm making from this is, because these are privately owned IPs where the growth of the game, the roadmap of the game is governed by a private entity, Riot can say, hey, we're changing up League of Legends. Valo is saying, hey, Riot is saying, we're going to change up how Valo works. Does that always keep it competitive? What could that landscape be? So that's what we look for in a founder is, can they adapt to that? Do they sort of have a good sense of how they will adapt their business? Now, historically, in sort of these kind of spaces, it's also not always easy for a team to monetize very well. And if you look at the journeys of teams globally, you're seeing a FaZe Clan, a Fanatics. Very few get acquired. Some of them do IPOs, and then they also go down. They go from big valuations to low valuations. These are not necessarily bad things as much as it just tells me the industry is in a state of flux, right? Everyone is figuring out what will be their real, drivers, what is the right business strategy to build a stable business around this model. So if one thing is, let's say when I'm evaluating a company, I look at these things. I'm like, what are the various things they're doing that are making sure there's money in the bank, making sure there's opportunities for growth. Typically, and there are some great esports teams here that are treating the sort of business as a business, and then others that are at a smaller scale that are just like, okay, we are a group of people who really like playing esports, so we have a scout, we have a coach, and we're good at the game. But it's not always that, okay, we've built a business around the team and we have influence. Now, around that, and this is sort of, I look at the market landscape, right? It's sometimes very difficult to map what's happening in India to what's happened in Europe and the US, because that audience, has been playing games competitively. It's culturalized really well that since they're 13, 14 years old, they've been playing those games, they've aged up, they're comfortable spending. And in India, what we've seen in these last few years is with sort of the rise of streamers. And today, I mean, how many of you follow streamers, are streamers over here, for example? You see that they are actually driving games awareness. BGMI has, of course, taken off over the last 4 to 5 years, but even that has been so heavily driven by streamers today. So, when you're trying to sort of map what the factors are, you have to really look at India as it stands. I'm actually very positive about a lot of esports teams and leagues that I see. Nodwin, of course, has paved the way in so many ways, by at least building a global brand out of India in the esports space. But then everyone who else, you're looking at, let's say, infra companies that are finding the opportunities between streaming, between content creation, production, tournament organizing. And what I'm really seeing is many, many companies in the esports space moving to a critical mass where they've built their own localized ecosystems where they're offering different things. And in parallel, one thing that we're optimistic about is also how brand awareness is growing, brand understanding that, esports, gaming is a driver to reach a new audience that does not follow historical patterns of consumption. And as that learning grows, the not risk appetite, but the willingness to put sponsorship money down in larger and larger ticket sizes will also grow. And thus sort of build that, healthy ecosystem.
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the trends that I've been seeing. I get texts from new organizations, mainly tier 2, tier 3 cities. They just start off with a couple of lakhs. They've signed a couple of brands, they've signed the players, and they go win one of the regional, if not national tournaments. And that's the extent to which the founders have been thinking. And post that is the guidance that they need, is the business modeling and the overall plan. So while I have a lot of questions, let me first pass on to the audience. Let's hear some of their questions. Can we share, do we have the mics ready? Yeah. Anyone who has a question, please raise your hand. Okay, so let me continue with my questions then. I think there's no one with a question yet. We'll give them a chance later. So today in the ecosystem where there are there are leagues in BGMI, but other than that, Indian teams don't really feature in some of the biggest leagues out there, like in the Dota International or CSGO finals and stuff. Of course, we do have global esports in the Valorant ecosystem. What do you think is missing in our teams or in our leagues to go take it to that international global standards? Any thoughts?
I think it's just a function of time. So some good things that we're seeing, right? Over the last 2 years, you're seeing a movement from mobile gamers to PC gamers. So 1 in 3 mobile gamers in India are shifting to PC. You're seeing this driven, and proof of this is also you're seeing PlayStation 5 sales are going up. Some of you may have seen that even Sony is now making more, Spider-Man ads are coming up. There's marketing happening in metros and so on. You're seeing the number of gaming quality PCs with graphic cards, 1650, NVIDIA 1650 onwards, being sold. So 21 million units sold in the last financial year, FY23. And these are all very, very healthy signs. I don't think it's a lack of skill or ability. I think it's really just a function of time. We're still very early in the journey. The number of gamers is growing. The number of people who can get into games, who are seeing that buying the devices, getting in, is there. You're seeing, yes, Global is now in DCT. You're seeing, is it Entity that's playing the international and has been for a while. You're seeing these great organizations, outside of Global, Orangutan. The talent is coming, the businesses are growing. And in the next 3 to 5 years, as the industry grows around them, as the funnel, the player base increases, that there are more competitive, capable players coming in, these potential athletes coming in, sponsorship coming in, you'll see all these companies grow. It's really just a matter of time.
Sure. Any thoughts there, Anu?
Yeah, I agree with Shagun on a lot of points. And if I were to add, I say yes, definitely there is nothing that's stopping, right? It's like if you look at an athlete and you say, hey, as an athlete, what do you dream, right? Do you dream to be India #1 or you do dream to be the world #1? And if you want to become the world number one, there are organizations in India today that esports clubs that provide a lot of support, right? And because the vision is aligned with both, the club wants to be in world number one, the athlete wants to be world number one, and you as of today, with the kind of prize pools that are in the Indian circuit, even while the time, because you're not going to start today as a pro athlete and become to that position tomorrow, right? And that's the journey that you're going to follow. But during that journey, you will get tournaments that you play with prize pools that are far like 10-20x of what they were 5-10 years back, right? So there is a lot of sustainability for you when you're going through that journey. Plus there is a club that's supporting you, so and who is in the patience game along with you. So there is nothing actually stopping. It's if you follow what biggest esports organizers worldwide like ESL and so on talk about, they say basically what we are looking at is the Michael Jordan of esports, the Cristiano Ronaldo of esports, right? So why can't that person come from India? That's the opportunity that exists, and the day that guy particularly comes in, irrespective of what game he comes from, that's the big hit that we require as for 10 other people to look at, right? And that's the story always, because you as anyone who's growing up, you want to see somebody who's either successful and then you follow that particular person, or you basically say that, hey, I will become that particular person, right? So between those two ways, you have to decide as an athlete what you want to be. But support is there, and there is a lot of support then compared to what 10 years back, right? So
Absolutely. We don't have the Sachin Tendulkar of esports yet. Good point.
we don't have.
We don't have the Sachin Tendulkar of esports yet.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and I know PUBG Mobile is probably the biggest esports game from India, but that doesn't mean that an esports team in a different genre altogether, a different game, it can be any other game, right? It can be Fortnite and so on. So the opportunity is there. But you just don't have to keep yourself saying, hey, I will just be an athlete in this game. Just keep open, see what game you like, what game you want to continue playing as an athlete. And if you are good, and the support will come.
You wanted to add something?
I think on a market level, another really interesting thing to look at is the fact that the esports audience. So, okay, open question to the audience. Who went for the BGIS event in Mumbai? Any hands? Anyone went? The PUBG BGMI finals in Mumbai? No? 20,000 people across 3 days, right? Absolutely fascinating to see. You know, 2005, 2010, you had 20 guys in a room or in a cyber cafe and one can of Red Bull to be shared amongst them. Today you have people, all jokes aside, you have 20,000 excited players. There was so much crowd there that people couldn't even get in. It's actually very nice to see. And the data point here is that the esports consuming audience is between 12 to 24, right? They are consumers of game streaming, they're consumers of esports, and it sort of blurs the lines. They're willing to spend, but because they're young, they don't always have the money to spend directly. There's also parental arbitrage over here. This is the gaming native group, right? Many of us grew up playing games, but we were a smaller percentage. Today, consuming games in these various fashions is really on the rise. It is there. So as this audience ages up and gains more spending autonomy, as you will just automatically see the industry grow. It's just a matter of time, and it's very nice to see, actually.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question. Can you pass on the mic, please?
Yeah, it's not about esports and all, my question, but since you brought up streaming, right, I want to ask you about it. So I have a YouTube channel. For 1 year, I've been doing it. It's not been growing. It's been 500 subs, been static the whole time. Is there a key to streaming in India? Because I've seen all the big YouTubers, right? They've got like techno gamers and all. Is it a regional language thing? Is it that if you stream in English or something, you won't get as many streamers? What is it? Like, what's the key there?
If you want to go for this.
See, when you say about techno gamers, these big streamers,
Yeah.
they bring something new every day. Correct. It's just about the uniqueness that you create on the stream. Whenever a person is coming and watching you, the uniqueness that they get, that they don't get in another stream. Correct. And other streamers and everything. It's not about the language. Yes, it plays a role, but not that much. Correct. It's about what unique you are doing, what's new you are doing. That plays a much important role.
And is that the same ecosystem as like making YouTube videos and stuff like that, or are they two different ball games? Making standalone videos, I mean.
So, hey, I'm not an expert about streaming.
Yeah,
just
I
so
think
you know.
a content creator
But-
house or a streamer or an esports club that is content creators will be able to understand and answer your question much better.
But if you want a market level answer, when you're looking at it as a gaming streamer, some of this is the function fact that you're a performer and you have to figure out what works for your audiences, right? You will have hyper local streamers who are streaming in Telugu, Kannada, Tamil, who have 100,000 users who are coming for every video of this. That is their user base, so they're super loyal. You know, and then you have someone like a techno with 35, 7 million, 30 million plus users who are following what he does. And he's built a niche over the years, right? I can't tell you how to grow your stream.
I could add to that, right? I mean, especially during COVID, what had happened was the explosion. I mean, if someone has 30 million, I mean, let's not take techno as an example, but someone has some X million of subscribers or followers, it's not necessary that all X will come for every video, as you must have seen. So what happened is there was a lot of cross collaboration. So let's say I have 5 million subscribers, you have just 500, but I give you a chance. And we have some sort of a collaboration. I showcase your talent in that stream. You get probably 100,000, 500,000 people from my stream getting to know you. That's your opportunity. Now that is how a lot of the young talent with unique abilities who were first able to impress a bigger streamer grew. That could be something that works very well for wannabe or early stage guys. But most important thing that I've heard even in the earlier panel where there were esport franchises and content creator heads, consistency is key. Right now, habit forming is what is keeping people come to specific channels. That habit forming will only happen when there is that consistency. So if I'm watching some streamer for some content, I know every day morning I'm going to wake up to watch what is put out there. Something like that. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap up the panel. I think we are a little over time anyway. So yeah, perfect. So thank you guys. Wonderful insights. I hope you guys keep continuing to fund lots of esports companies and India has thriving esports ecosystem. Gaming has just started taking off. I hope esports investments in esports also takes off very well in the next couple of years, if not.
Thank you, Ravi. And I would say I'll probably very hopeful that maybe we can have some esports publishers or developers, right? And I know there is a lot of AAA games and casual and hyper casual games that are coming out of India. But if there are game developers who are building esports ready or esports first games, that is a great opportunity and should also look forward to that.